So welcome everybody to today's webinar regarding, well, it's a really good topic actually going forward into your career. So like moving up from cybersecurity auditor to information security manager. I think it's a good topic, and especially if you have somebody who can share from his experience, because obviously when you enter the field, it's sometimes difficult to start from, or you don't know where to start with, which company, where can I actually gain more experience in the cybersecurity field. And I think it's good if you have somebody you can talk to or also ask to, and especially if somebody already worked a couple of years in that field, or also how he developed. Maybe I also have to say a couple of words to myself. So basically, when I started entering my professional career, there was no cybersecurity. Actually, we're not talking about cybersecurity. We're only talking about IT security. So that also changed a little bit. But there were no really possibilities to also study cybersecurity, which obviously now changed in a good way. So you can do that. So basically, you're not entering a field from scratch, but you already have some knowledge, theoretical knowledge, and then hopefully you can start getting into contact with a bigger company, and well, so yeah, start entering the cybersecurity field, well, securing networks, or even go just securing employees, do some awareness campaigns, put up IT policies, security policies, and progress in your career. So I think it's a good way to go through, but I will come to that later. So let's dive into it. Like the title is already showing, from cybersecurity auditor to information security manager. Hopefully that won't be the last step in your career. And then you can also obviously progress further. But I think for me personally, it was a good way to learn and to progress, and well, to move where I'm today. Okay, so I quickly want to also tell you about my journey, or my kind of career steps. So when I started actually as a cybersecurity auditor at PwC, you start as a team member, but even there you already have a good commitment to work on cybersecurity. Well, if I take it also as an example, I was very lucky, and obviously I learned a lot, and I was lucky with at one client side. Well, I mean, the client was not that lucky because that obviously was a bigger breach, but for me personally, I learned a lot. So what happened at their side was that they were doing a lot of development with external developers, software developers, and they well, to make things obviously easier, they didn't have a proper development and testing side. So they had the testing side, but the data actually they were testing with was not just the dump or kind of data which were anonymized. They basically took the real data, and so those external developers had actually access to the real data. And what we also found out during our audit was that they also created a couple of kind of ghost users or credentials to have actually nearly full admin rights then on the productive environment. So these were really major or high alert incidents, which will obviously showed that the client, and they have no clue. So just to give you an experience how things are out there. I mean, sometimes obviously software developers have to work in a high intensity, and they forget about things. But in that case, really the client should have never given them that much control, and also checked them from time to time. So as I said, monitoring is very important. You can also log your also internal stuff. I mean, not to see what they are browsing, but I mean, insider threat is a big threat, and you should really know where your data lies. So that means if you see on your network that somebody, either internal or external, is transferring a lot of data, 2 GB of data, towards, let's say, Russia, well, at least the system should notify and should block it, and the security responsible should be, or should have the possibility to actually allow that or not. So those kinds of things are really, well, I think, interesting to do. And as I said, that was a good, also for me personally, a good thing to learn. And I think we also increased a lot about their cybersecurity or awareness once we found actually that the kind of loophole or how those two developers had actually made their way through to get kind of full admin rights. So that was a good thing to do. Yeah, further on, once I moved to cybersecurity consultant, obviously there we had a lot of cybersecurity programs where, yeah, when I entered, well, the client side, I sometimes found very little or non-existing cybersecurity awareness. So that was sometimes shocking when, yeah, people were just handling data with no care and no security measures at all. So basically, you could yeah, either send them whatever, they would, well, 80% or 90% would actually, you would be successful by 90% if you would do a phishing attack and so on. So luckily things changed. I also think because of a lot of things moved towards also your private life. So the private data was hacked or credentials were hacked. So people are getting more and more aware about those kinds of stuff. But nevertheless, it's well, really good. And sometimes you have to show people how things are done really. So, which brings me to the next point. What we also did from time to time, I brought in a colleague of mine who was a kind of ethical hacker, and we did a lot of live hacking during our awareness campaigns, which was always good. So you could really demonstrate how things are done. I mean, sometimes we hacked their network. Sometimes we did some also physical security and not damage, but intrusion. So basically, we we sent a couple of SMS to an assistant, telling them that well, we were telling them that we were actually the CEO. We were a couple of days on a conference, but we quickly wanted to come back to the office, but we forgot our badge. So if she could leave her badge in a deposit box, and we will just quickly enter it in the evening and then leave it there in the morning. So, and it was easily done. She believed it. Well, obviously we faked our phone number. She left the badge there. We entered it easily with a badge, and also plugged in a couple of malicious USB sticks, and also grabbed a couple of physical documents, just also to show the client that we were really in the building. Next day, somebody turned on their laptops, workstations, and we also got access through our USB sticks. So really to give you some real cases. And obviously, if you can do that, it's always good, because then people are really, really aware, especially, well, never do some finger pointing. That's not a good way to do, but if you say it more in a well, kind proper way, that things will actually happen, then we got data. You don't have to classify it or bring it back, well, down to a person. Really, they are very aware, and they will definitely next time think about, well, leaving a proper badge in a deposit box. Yeah, which brings me also now to my last station, information security manager. Obviously, there as a CISO, you are overlooking the big picture, and there, obviously, I had a couple of incidents where obviously you have to manage. So it's always there's no really recipe, but there are a couple of ways how you have to deal with, but there's no really recipe how to tell you if you take that handbook you will be fine, because obviously it depends also on the attack, what is actually involved. But you can prepare yourself. As I said before, you should really be also resilient with a lot of things. You just check your backup. You should know how quickly your crucial system has to be up and running in case of there's a shutdown or whatever. So those things you can really prepare, and then you will face other problems. I mean, often there are also lack of communication, or communication is not that clear. How quickly can you also speak to your board? Do you have a communication just person who are actually talking about that kind of stuff also in the public, and so on? So just think about it, do a lot of stress tests that will help you. Build a couple of checklists if even the whole grid is down or you don't have any kind of power. So those are really basic things. I mean, once we also did a crisis simulation on a Saturday, I remember, in the morning, and everybody actually from the board joined, and we had also a proper facility, external, but nobody had a key. So just to show you also one real example, everybody, well, we were very well prepared, but one small thing was missing, and yeah, we had to do things outside, which was nice because of that day. Well, it was not raining, so that was okay. But just to give you an example, so I think those kinds, hopefully, those kinds of example, well, you also experience them on your career path, and yeah, so it's, I think, always you learn a lot. As I said, there is no 100% handbook, so you always have to involve and also make people aware that things can happen fast. I also experienced a ransomware attack, so that's never a nice thing. But if you if you're very well prepared, then you can actually bring those infected devices quickly under control, put them in the quarantine. In best case, wipe them completely, then reinstall them, and the people are up and running in a couple of hours. Obviously, you have to also go through your network to see if there are any other things left about that intrusion. But just to give you an idea how things can work also fast, if you're very well prepared, things might look bad in the beginning, but are under control in a quite fast way. And I think that's also the beauty about the job. You will never experience things basically twice or very very alike. Often, you you have to deal with some little bit different situations, but again, try to improve yourself as well. Try to improve your cybersecurity policies, your awareness campaigns, so that you make your environments and your companies more. So if we jump to the next slide, you can clearly see a couple of different steps in your career. So when you start, obviously, you can see that there are more jobs for beginners, and then if you go further down, if you progress in your career, there are obviously less, because as you go up the career ladder, obviously there are less top positions. I mean, once you gain full knowledge, or at the end, let's say if you chief security officer or chief information security officer, obviously you're heading, if you're sitting in a bigger department, the whole cybersecurity division. So basically that's only one job. And if you're more an analyst or an IT auditor, then obviously there are more peers around you. That's why there are also more jobs. But let me talk about those different years of experience at this stage. So we will start actually in the beginning from 0 to 4 years. So basically, personally, when I started, so you can, on the next slide, you can actually see all the steps I went through. So you can see I started actually as a cybersecurity auditor at PwC, where I audited a lot of different actually financial sector companies, starting obviously with a lot of banking in Switzerland, but then I also did a lot of reinsurance auditing, also in Bermuda and the States. So that was a really good experience. And it's also a good entry point. As I said, if you're starting from 0 to 4 years, it's when you start actually as this cybersecurity auditor, well, first of all, you have to get good knowledge about any kind of regulatory stuff. So this is a good way to learn. So IT security field, obviously you should understand NIST, the NIST framework, but also it's also great to know the ISO 27001. So that's also a good framework to know. And well, yeah, then you can, and obviously then you can also focus into more in-depth audit programs. If you want to do some auditing, special auditing for, well, I don't know, let's say SAP or other bigger operating systems, you can also focus on them. But well, if you do it for obviously for one of the big 4 companies, normally one part of the financial report is also based on a IT supported part, where obviously a cybersecurity auditor is needed. So basically you also have to bring in your input to finalize the financial statement. So, and this obviously gives you, it's a great chance to also join a bigger team, as I said, to also get their understanding, and yeah, so go further. After that, I also had a couple of years. Well, I did as a consultant, cybersecurity consultant. So that was when I was at Deticon Consulting. That's actually the in-house consulting for German Telecom. So just to let you know, so we did, and that's obviously also a big company. So we did a lot of IT security or cybersecurity projects for bigger clients in terms of well, if they wanted to change their whole well, either phone equipment or even network, or also the whole cabling. So that was very, very technical. It was a good thing for me to learn as well. So also there I progressed. I started as a consultant basically, and then I grew further and further till at the end actually I took over the whole IT security department for the consulting. So that was also a good thing. And then at the end, obviously, I finished as information security manager, or even further as chief information security manager or officer at DHL, Allianz and Cryptics, where I'm now. So that's basically, in a nutshell, my career. But I will come to that well, later on as well. So just to let you know what kind of steps I did. So if you look at the next slides. So yeah, here. So to start with, as I said, I started for PwC as a cybersecurity auditor. It's really good, as I said, for beginners or students, or to do an apprenticeship even, to enter that field. It's also good if you have a mentor. Well, they also have actually mentoring programs, but even if they don't have, just try to get into a bigger team. And then if you also connect very well with one of your superior, maybe try to talk to him, and so that you can actually mentoring yourself. I had the chance actually at PwC at that time that I had actually really a good mentor who learned me a lot and taught me also a lot, which is a good thing. And obviously after that you can also a little bit influence on what kind of projects you want to go through. So I mean, if he has open projects and you see that there's a lot of cybersecurity experience needed, or let's say one project has to do a lot with encryption and you're very keen in encryption, then obviously if you talk to him, hopefully, or her, hopefully you will actually also be able to join that program. What is also very important is to see a lot of different infrastructure, but as I said, if you're joining one of the big 4, obviously they have a lot of external clients, you will see a lot, and it's also some infrastructure are actually good, some are less good, so it's always to pick the best out of it. And I mean, there are a lot of companies facing different problems. Some have also a lot of budget, others not. Some have also bigger cybersecurity employees. Others have none, or just one, or not even one, just somebody who has also a little bit to overlook cybersecurity. So yeah, so it's always good if you can, and you will always help with your knowledge. So tell them what to do. Bring in, well, starting with IT security policies, and then, well, and then further down, also to monitor, well, security breaches. So, but yeah, so then the clients normally also very keen to get a lot of experienced people, also from external. As I said before, also learning a lot about regulations. Here I just mentioned a couple of them, because obviously that's very important. I think it's also important for companies to align to standards, even if they don't want to get a certification, but it's always good if they can show, well, according to NIST or according to ISO 27001, we are very aligned with that. And if they have to show it to an auditor, external, or even if they want in future, then also get a certification, it will be easier to get that certification, and also to give their customers confident that they're very keen about their security, also about the customers' data, and yeah, so that they're a step ahead, or at least state of the art in their field. I think that's very important. What is also important, I mean, once you started, normally you can do a lot of internal training, but once you see where you want to develop, I also recommend to do first educational trainings. Well, I did quite a lot of training. I mean, some were mandatory to actually progress in your career, but others were, well, not out of interest, but always also were in those kind of fields. And I also try to, well, get a bigger picture. I also think it's very important, even if you're at the top of the ladder, to still do educational training, because, well, I mean, the bad guys out there, like the hackers or intruders, they don't stop, and they will also evolve. So you should also see what kind of tools and how they behave. So you should learn that as well, and not just on a theoretical level, but also on a practical level. So otherwise, I mean, your knowledge is kind of okay, but maybe also already outdated. And yeah, if you just know everything on a theoretical level, yeah, for me, it's always understanding the half truth, because also things change. And I think if you really know what you're talking about, well, also people will well, take you, I guess, also take you more serious, but and also give you, I guess, also better ranking, well, on a professional level. Which brings me to the next point. You should also build up your own professional network. Obviously internal, but also external. So join any kind of well, organizations which are out there and are, well, either teaching or doing some trainings in that field. There are, well, a lot of communities in terms of cybersecurity. Try to figure out which ones are most efficient for you. A lot of them also provide you with additional templates, programs, or even career path, books, and so on. So I think that's a good way to go forward. So that's basically the one part about cybersecurity as an auditor. If you go a little bit further, or as the next step, like in my case, then I switched to cybersecurity consultant. Well, still try to see a lot of different cybersecurity programs or client sites. Obviously, as I said, I was lucky. I entered the field of telecommunication at that time. I was lucky to see a lot of also multinational companies, really with worldwide programs, which were very interesting, but very time consuming, also sometimes hard to work. At that time, also a lot of traveling involved. But well, really good to see how things work all over the place. Because I think you should also sometimes get out of your comfort zone and, well, and also see how things work differently. I mean, different cultures, of different people, and obviously different IT running IT systems. So I think that's a good way to learn. As I mentioned on the slide, obviously do as much program project work as possible. I mean, this is so basically you will learn most. I mean, at that point I already had some experience, so I could do a lot of things also by myself. Sometimes I was also a one-man show, but if possible, I try to also get a team involved. I think you always also learn. You also should try then at one point to also delegate stuff, so not that you have to do the whole thing, and you can actually also well, get people to learn stuff from yourself. So I think that's also a good way to go forward. So yeah, really try to do a lot of things from scratch. I mean, one thing I also did during my period as a cybersecurity consultant was to prepare a client to actually for ISO 27001 certificate, which I think is really a good thing to do if you can. So basically, yeah, so I went to that client. First of all, obviously, I had a lot of interviews also with the board, but also with the program manager to understand what exactly they wanted. Well, I mean, it's quite, in that case, it's quite clear because obviously they want a certification. But first of all, you need to know what they already have. So basically, you're gathering all that kind of information, documentation. You have a look at that. Then obviously you have to improve where it's lacking for that standard. And at the end, you also want to implement obviously a couple of controls. So it's well, it's really, and then what I always think is important is should not just be a one-time thing and then you're out as a consultant, but you should really feel that the whole company is actually shifting to a next level in the cybersecurity field. So I always like it when you go to the cafeteria or the internal restaurant and you can hear people from all kinds of departments talking about cybersecurity. I think then at least a couple of things stayed in their head. I think that's a good way to also notice that you did a good job. And obviously in that kind, if they also passed the certification, then a third party actually checked if you also did a good job. So that's on top. But that's so. And that in that case also you will also learn a lot about regulation because yeah, you're the expert. You have to know the whole standard basically by yourself or from heart, and then well, give the client really a good understanding how things are done. It's not just a one-time thing. Obviously, the certification will last for 3 years, but you should also involve. I mean, it's a continuous learning approach. And yeah, so it's management should also understand what kind of responsibility they have. So yeah, it's not just a one-time signature. They have to redo stuff. Policies have to be adapted. New things are coming up. Also, the standard is actually evolving. So all this kind of stuff you have to well really tell them so that things stay. And then that after 3 years, hopefully they also will achieve the certification again. Additionally, obviously, continue with educational training. At that time, I actually also well tried to evolve also a little bit in that field. I also got the kind of license as a tutor for ISO 27001 lead auditor. So that was a good thing because obviously I was so in depth with that standard that I thought, well, I can also teach others about the standard, so that they can become lead editors and well to help other clients or even their internal company well either to achieve the certificate or just be very close to that and build up a security framework. Also very important is enlarge your professional network. I mean, then go on with visiting cybersecurity events, or as I said before, also become a tutor and also build up your professional network in that kind of well, field. You gain more and more knowledge. You can also really show that you're an expert, and yeah, so that well, people come to you, or even employees also come to you, peers come to you, asking about stuff around cybersecurity, and yeah, and just follow also cybersecurity events. As I said, it's a very interesting field. It will never stop and evolve. Obviously, in one point it's fine, and on the other hand, you also have to well, keep up. I personally think it's really nice, because otherwise I would a little bit get bored if we had a super solution for everything and nobody would be possible to. Well, we had no intruders anymore, no hackers, nothing. I mean, it would be well kind of ideal world if everything would be safe, but that's not how it is. There will, as long as somebody writes code, there will also always be some flaws. And yeah, I mean, it's quite easy. I mean, if somebody writes code and we look at that code in 5 to 10 years, obviously it's old, it's outdated. So things are evolving. So you really need also experts in that field to secure that environment, code and software, hardware, whatever. So I really think it's a good field to enter and to also continue. Which brings me to the next slide. So if you have the more than 8 to 12 years of experience and you grew up, you get to the next well, kind of step in your career, information security manager, as I said before, or also CISO, whatever, chief security officer. Well, yeah, then you will be more and more responsible to oversee the whole cybersecurity program, again, for either internal or external. Well, then obviously you have responsibility for a lot of things. I mean, it won't just be a project, but then it will really be for the well, security standard or framework. Hopefully you have one. So you have to overlook well, policies. You have to do some awareness campaign, well, phishing campaign. Obviously, you also have to talk to the board and also be kind of sparring partner, telling them what kind of new well, tools or intruders or groups are out there. Well, I mean, also what's actually happening in the darknet. Also, data privacy is also a big point, obviously, which comes more and more into, well, also to their attention. Well, also, obviously, building resilience or disaster recovery programs is very important. Also, to set up a proper incident management. Well, I've seen a lot of companies which were kind of, well, prepared, but once they were hit by an attack, you really saw a lot of things which were not good at all. I mean, starting with the incident. So no proper communication. Everybody was finger pointing to everybody, IT to business, business to IT, then IT to the externals to the internals, and so on. So you're losing a lot of time if things are not just set up how it should be. And yeah, so sometimes it's also, as I said, it's important on that level that you also get everybody well, at the table, so that they discuss with each other, and that you can also fix well, what kind of systems are most crucial, and how quickly actually they should be up and running in case of a ransomware attack or whatever. So really, and also recheck your backups regularly, so that you have things really up and running in case you got hit. Well, also one nice point is always to check new technologies. As I said, well, encryption or blockchain are big buzzwords. Artificial intelligence, obviously the cloud. If you're still using kind of legacy systems or a lot of things internal, maybe you should also consider to go a step further. There are a lot of things out there. Well, I mean, also again, hopefully at that point you also have a lot of or a bigger network, so you can talk to colleagues about similar problems or what they actually faced when they were moving to the cloud or whatever. So this is really important, and just to wait and to feel secure that now you have a secure system. As I said, in a couple of years it won't be that secure anymore at the latest. So you should really also have to see it further than the horizon. So to see what kind of additional service maybe you can also use, or maybe use, as I said, new technology like blockchain to improve also your well, internal, external services. make them also more secure. I think that's also a good way. Again, also don't think you know everything after 8 or 12 years. Also continue to do educational training. Here I pointed out also to do some practical exams, which I think is very important as well. As I mentioned, if I take an example, like when you do the certified ethical hacker, that's a good way to start. But after a while, you can also actually do the practical exam. I think that's also a very good way to do, because, well, as I said, it's always good to understand things on a theoretical level, but it's even better if you also understand how you can do it on the console. So I think those kinds of trainings are also, well, are very good. They're intense, they're long, and also the exam is long. But I think it's really good to do, and then you will learn a lot. As I said, so you get also kind of hands-on feeling. I mean, it depends also. Sometimes as a information security manager, you're quite far away from the console, or, well, I'd say you're just monitoring a lot of stuff, but you're not, well, really, obviously it's not your job to well, run your web server or so on, but again, if you understand how things are done on a practical level, it's really also good to to increase also the expertise in-house. So you can also really talk to, as I said, the web server administrator about real attacks, how it works, and also how it works. So as I said, on a practical level, I think that's really good. And you can also set up new phishing campaigns, which I think is they will be more kind of real cases. So you really see also how, well, macros and links and so on work, or like even cross-site scripting. You can go further. You can set up your own phishing campaigns, and I think that's making things more realistic. So I really think those practical exams are very good. Yeah, and then if you have that much experience, obviously you can also join cybersecurity communities, take over, well, a couple of their roles, or board roles. I mean, starting with advisory roles, or even sitting in a board of a community, which will also obviously broaden your network, and so that you can also, I mean, if you want to obviously talk to, well, at cybersecurity events or do some webinars or whatever, but I really think it's a good, well, personally, I think it's always also good to share experience, not just to keep everything, so that well, next generations will learn also from mistakes, but hopefully also from good things. Well, somebody actually experienced. So I think that's really a good point. So, and that's basically it about my several steps, or the 3 steps we were talking today. So from cybersecurity auditor to information security manager. Well, I mean, it's not, you don't really have to follow that step. I mean, you can also start as a consultant, and then obviously directly go to information security manager. But I was talking from my experience, and I really think it was also good, because, as I said, as a cybersecurity auditor, you learn a lot of regulatory stuff, and then as a consultant, you can actually implement what you learned during your cybersecurity auditor days. And once you gain more and more experience in that field, you can actually take over to oversee on a global level the cybersecurity program. So I think that's a good way to go. And as I said, never forget to also educate yourself. So do some training, start with theoretical stuff, and then try to do more and more practical exams. Yeah, and also try to get more and more involved into cybersecurity community. I think if you really do all that kind of stuff, you will be good to go, and I think you will also will find jobs in the future, and yeah, enjoy being in that field. So that's basically what I wanted to talk about, and I think now it's time for a Q&A session. So thank you for your attention.